Public address to the board. This is a time when the public may address the board on any item listed on the meeting agenda or any issue or matter of the town. If you intend on addressing the board at this time, we ask you to do the following. Please identify yourself by name, address, or the company/institution you represent. The public address to the board segment will last no longer than 30 minutes. Please make your comments concise and try not to repeat statements made by others. Please address your comments to the board chair. Discussion or debate on any issue may not take place at this time. The chair or designee may answer questions on procedural matters. Please be cordial and respectful of others. If anyone wishes to be recognized when the board discusses an agenda item, please make note of that request at this time. The board chair may grant this request. Address comments to the board chair and be concise. We are meeting in person and making this meeting available via Zoom for the convenience of the public. Since we are meeting in person, we will not be responsible for any technical difficulties. So if you'd like to be sure of participating, please attend in person. Does anyone want to speak on any item or otherwise? Henry. Okay.
Louisa Forest, Raymond Drive. I know that you asked at a town meeting to have the lines painted at the basketball court in High Grove Park for basketball and pickleball, but it hasn't been over a year or maybe even longer than that. It hasn't been done. Do you know anything about it?
What can you answer that?
Yeah, that's, it was done in May, but one of the, 4 or 5 months, but it's going to be done next week.
Thank you. Anyone else? Henry?
Henry Rose, 89 North Mountain Road, just a couple of comments. At the last meeting, we talked about how we need more volunteers for town committees. And I just want to emphasize that we need people on the Conservation Commission, that we need a chair. My wife Charlotte stepped down. And we strongly recommend a conservation agent. We already spoke to Tom about that. So I'm hoping that we'll be hearing about more volunteers for the new chair, and we're going to hear more progress to be made on the conservation. I also wanted to say the Open Space Committee, they needed people. They had an eager volunteer by the name of Jen Gitlitz, and she has not yet heard, to my knowledge, that she was appointed. So I'd like to know when she will be appointed. And then finally, a comment about the police station. Even if we're going to build a new building, I sure hope that the repairs that are necessary to make that a safe and healthy place, I hope those are being undertaken. I believe they are.
Yes, they are. Thank you, Henry. Anyone else? Okay. Leads us to number 5, appointment ratifications. Mr. Hutchinson.
Hi, we're pleased to be able to present Amy Coates as a part-time health inspector, effective tomorrow. She has had excellent, successful result to her pre-employment physical. And if you just say a few words about yourself and your interest in the position, that would be great.
Hi, yes, my name is Amy Coates, and I'm from, well, I live in between Charlemont and Shelburne Falls. I went back to school a little bit later after I had my kids, got my bachelor's of science in public health. And I already have part of my certifications done towards my public health field that I like to work in, which is health inspector. It's just kind of hard getting into the field. There's a lot of little towns, and as we all know, it's part-time or part-time this year. But I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to work for the town of Dalton. It's a very beautiful area. I'd like to get to know it better and help out in the field of public health.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dan?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the appointment of Amy Coates as part-time health inspector effective September 24th, 2024. Pending results of pre-employment physical and drug screen, which I believe has already been completed.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, Mr. Hutchinson.
If somebody else. raised their
Yes,
hand.
as you know, we've had quite some trouble filling.
Well, I just want to make a comment that my phone is not turned on, we couldn't hear what she was saying really well, so.
Okay.
If anyone else is.
We'll just have to move close. Okay.
That microphone is not for.
There's no amplification.
There's no amplification in the room, so I think if anyone is coming to speak, maybe we'll turn the chair, we can be heard.
Speak loudly.
And speak louder, of course. My apologies, yeah, it's for the recording.
Sorry.
All right, sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
Thank you, see you tomorrow.
As you know, we've had, quite a lot of trouble filling spots in the DPW. And, we have a candidate who would like to recommend for employment, Brendan Polidoro, who, has, passed his pre-employment physical, so that's no longer applicable, and if we could make that effective tomorrow, then that would be great too, and we'll get the offer letters ready for when they come in and take care of the paperwork at that time.
Okay, so the pre-employment physical drug screen is complete. Tom,
I'm sorry?
pre-employment physical and drug screen is complete?
Yes, are they?
Amy's was, I'm not sure about his yet.
Okay, well, I'm gonna leave it in the note
Okay,
for
then,
now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the appointment of Brendan Polidoro as equipment operator effective September 24th, 2024, pending the results of the pre-employment physical and drug screen.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further
Okay,
discussion?
we would like to hear from Mr. Polidoro.
Yeah. Come on up.
And Bud? Come on down, Bud.
Come on, bud.
I understand Mr. Polidoro prepared a 30-minute speech on the history of Dalton.
Lengthy speech. Good evening.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so I'm 34 years old. Have a family, a newborn, she's about to turn a year old. The last 3 years or so, I've been involved in this kind of work. I've got my CDL, some excavation licenses, and gathered a little bit of experience. Obviously, I have a lot to learn in some aspects, but it interests me. I know somebody that works for the town of Dalton in the highway department, and he talks very highly about the town and the department itself, and it's interests me for quite some time. So once I got my certifications and licenses, I decided to apply.
Okay, great, fantastic.
Excellent.
We're happy to have him.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Welcome.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you for
much.
the opportunity.
Thank you for applying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom, one more.
And finally, we have with us this evening Tina Danzy, who's offering to volunteer for the ADA committee. This will fill that committee, which is another committee we've had trouble filling the slots in. Tina, if you'd like to come up and say hello to the select board and a little bit about yourself and your interest in the position. We wondered.
Good evening, Tina Danzy. I've actually been a resident of Dalton for over 15 years, and I happened to work with Pat Pettit, and he mentioned there was an opening on the ADA committee. I happen to be the executive director at Pittsfield Housing, so I have certifications in, property management and maintenance, and pretty much every different certification there is with OSHA standards. So I'm just looking to help out the best I can.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the appointment of Tina Danzy to the ADA committee effective September 24th, 2024 through June 30th, 2025.
Second. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Welcome, thank you very much.
Okay, now it's at 7:30. We'll skip that till we go to 7:30.
Sure.
Okay, we'll skip down to number 7. The condemnation report, fund report.
Yes, and you're the only one here from that group. If you can just come up, I'll give all the background and.
Sarah's as well.
Oh, hi. Oh, hey. These are the trusted team members, that we were able to get together to help out with this. This all, of course, sprang from the, select board's desire to help residents who were, at risk of having their houses condemned and see if there was anything we could do for them. All of these people have a lot of experience in dealing with residents who are of less, fewer means than most of us, and some of whom have complex living situations. And if you could just introduce yourself and state where you work, that would be great. And where you live and where you work, that would be very helpful.
Sarah Fontaine, I'm a resident of Dalton on Sleepy Hollow Drive, and I am the director of the Adams Tax Foundation.
And I think you know all else.
We don't know who Agnes is.
So, we've also had a couple of other people helping us out. Patty Carroll was very instrumental. And another one.
Lauren Bolio.
Yeah, Lauren Bolio, who was great experience in the field. And what we did was we asked ourselves what a program like this would look like. And there are a number of issues that we covered, a number of policy recommendations that we would make. There are other policy questions that still need to be addressed. I don't really expect us to go through and finalize this essentially program manual, the bare bones of the program manual this evening, but we would like to go over it. Maybe you better pull up chairs, that would be great. And let you know everything that we did talk about, the kinds of issues that we discussed, and some recommendations that we have.
Okay, that'd be great.
The first part is all background. One of the more important things in that is that there are various levels of condemnation, and each of them might require a different kind of timeline and turnaround for action. But in essence, the categories that we looked at were an assessment or an inspection of a particular piece of property. There are various ways that we might become aware of a piece of property. And they would lead to a formal observance of conditions at which it was recognized that this would be an appropriate fund to help someone out. The policy question involved in this is not just whether it might lead to condemnation, but whether other unsafe living conditions were observed. That is, there's a formal checklist that you would use for condemnation. And one of the things that the group would like is some clarification from the select board on the scope of the program. Is it just for condemnation, or would it also be for other potentially unsafe living conditions that might be observed? Again, not necessarily to be discussed tonight, but a policy question for the board based on the original intent of the fund. Then we decided that if the concern was not initiated by the health agent, it should be referred to the health agent for assessment, because she will be managing this type that this is part of her job to manage these housing issues. If the health agent decides that the fund could be part of the solution, the resident would be referred to a fund manager or a panel about which we speak later on. This is current protocol. Then there's the question of outreach. A number of people could let people know that this fund is available. But it is absolutely necessary to involve the health agent in that communication in order for that to be clear. One of the biggest questions we had revolved around eligibility and funding criteria. What is it that would make someone eligible for the use of this fund? And the major recommendation that we have here is that there should be a panel of staff and volunteers to oversee applications and payments. So that there should be multiple people involved in seeing cases come in, assessing eligibility, and making some kind of recommendation to move forward or not. There are a number of policy questions involved. Would we want to ask? Well, we're saying we should ask, is the person on fuel assistance or mass health? And according to our group, if they are, that would be sufficient to establish eligibility. Also, if they're not, what other resources might they have that are available? And our recommendation is to ask for financial information. This would include the last 2 years of taxes to establish income, a recent Social Security payment, assuming they're on Social Security, old enough to be on Social Security and getting it, a current bank statement, a request to state their current employment status, if any, and the number of dependents. So it is the recommendation of the group to ask for all of those pieces of information. Again, then this is a recommendation to the board. We would like your consideration and decision on that at some point. There is a question: must the residence be owned by a town resident, or must it be owner occupied? And our recommendation is yes, with the exception of tenants who hoard. That would not be the responsibility of the landlord. It would be the responsibility of the tenant. So if there was a case of a tenant who was in an unsafe living condition or at risk of making the house condemnable, we're proposing that the fund would be available to help clean up that situation. In general, we have to assess who is responsible for the situation. It could be a tenant, it could be a landlord, it could be the owner or someone else. That's another thing that would have to be assessed by what we're proposing, a panel of staff and volunteers to look at the cases. Another policy question, and our recommendation is just case by case. Should we only fund the person when no back taxes are owed by the owner? This is again assuming that the owner is the person that we're concerned about. We estimate as many as 75% of eligible applicants may owe back taxes. This could lead to 2 or more liens if the town decides to recoup funds through liens, which is another policy question we'll get to. Our recommendation on that is a case-by-case review. At a minimum, residents must meet with the treasurer to clear the payment plan or have one pending. The form of funding, is it a grant, a loan, or a combination? The panel recommends a maximum $2,000 grant with a potential maximum of $5,000 assistance. The amount of funding, again, $5,000. If the project were going to cost more than $5,000, the town's $5,000 would be the last $5,000 needed for the project. Should some of that amount be forgivable? Yes, again, $2,000 of it could be made into a grant. The eligible costs, our recommendation is any cost necessary to avoid condemnation according to the health agent. There's a question about the application form and what goes on it. The application form we're thinking should come. The question of giving the resident assistance to fill out the form. We anticipate some would need assistance. The recommendation is that Council on Aging staff assist the person, not volunteers. That involves questions of a query and similar questions. We have other questions about the application form, but one question is, should the applicant be responsible for providing all necessary information, including quotes for dumpsters, et cetera, or should staff and volunteers assist? Again, we've decided to make that a case-by-case basis. And should there be additional requirements? Yes, we believe the successful applicant for this should agree in writing to a plan. And that would involve a plan to improve and maintain a situation which would not lead to condemnation or unsafe conditions. We also would refer the resident to programs where those are available. For review of the staff, we need a blind review so that it's not, so we don't know who it's for. And that's our recommendation. And we would not recommend that volunteers be involved at least until the program is established. Again, to avoid the need for queries, involving queries and things like that. For scoring competitive applications, we'd say first come, first served. If 2 equal applications came in at the same time, the one that came in first would be the one that would get it. We would publish, the recommendation is we would publish a notification of acceptance. We'd also have a letter of commitment to vendors. And the vendors would pay the town directly, of course, not the resident. The vendors would bill the town directly. Again, we went on for we discussed loans and grants as we did before. Questions about repayment. This is where the question of a lien comes in. The argument for liens is that they're straightforward and it protects the town. Protects the town's interest in having given them money. The argument against is that it would inhibit participation. And also that it would involve legal fees and filing fees and things like that. Still, we recommended that there would be a lien for anything over $2,000 and we could forgive up to $2,000 as a grant. For amendments and additions to an application, the panel would report to set policies on that and approve any change orders that came in or disapprove change orders that came in. Once you go cleaning stuff up, you find more things and you have to deal with circumstances you didn't know about at the beginning. what is the decision point for closeout, for resolution? The panel would have to decide, this is as far as we go, this case is closed. For follow-up, we'll refer residents to additional programs. Our current staff is not necessarily specifically trained in that, so there's a caveat that we may not have the information. For any appeal of a decision, that would be a select board review. We're proposing. Should residents be able to use the fund multiple times? The recommendation is generally no, with exceptions for extraordinary circumstances or many years between applications. That is, you don't get to go back very, very often. We also have some possibilities for maintaining the fund and possible future expansion of the program to things other than houses that are in immediate danger of being condemned. This came up again and again. There are any number of situations where residents could benefit from a fund like this. The original purpose of this fund as it was set up was relatively new, and we spent a lot of time talking about other circumstances that are just as deserving, but may not fall under that strict definition. And I would just ask anyone if they wanted to add anything, if I missed anything, or emphasize anything, if they don't feel I spoke about it enough.
Well, a good example of something that wouldn't lead necessarily to condemnation based on something somebody's doing, for example, collecting, would be like black mold. So, you know, black mold can be very dangerous to somebody. Being a revolving account, there's got to be some sort of in and out. So that's why we said, you know, some of it could be forgiven, where larger amounts, part of it would have to be repaid back.
And again, under funding maintenance, one of the possibilities you say is to establish a revolving fund for this program. So that it really would be in and out, and we wouldn't have to refill it at town meeting every time.
I was
gonna say, Kelly, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I could foresee if this thing's being utilized, adding money to it every year at the town meeting. Not a ton of money, but then with a revolving account, and just adding, you know, $10,000 every year, it gets utilized. And I think everybody on the board agreed it was an excellent idea and a program that when it came up. So.
I'd like to thank you for doing all this, because that's a lot of stuff I never realized, all the little details and stuff, so I'm bored when you're done.
Bob, I have a few questions when I can.
Go ahead, Joe.
I think we need to take a step back for a minute and reflect on how this came about. It was around condemnation of homes that were occupied by the owner, that we're going to limit the fund to those loans, which were to be repaid either through liens on the property or things of that nature. But that was the intent, and that was the structure we discussed with Finance Committee and the proposal. It's not to have a revolving account. It's not to take care of tenant situations, because I believe, Mr. Hutchinson, that you referenced state law, that the town's already liable for that anyway. So that should be out of scope of this program, because the state law is driving our responsibility for those situations. And a revolving account, I don't think, is the spirit of it. I think this first year was, we're going to experiment with this fund, see what impact it made in the town, and also get repayment back from the homeowner when their estate was sold, at whatever time that is. I think we're expanding the scope significantly with the current proposal that's being presented tonight. That I think needs to be reviewed with possibly a joint committee meeting with the Finance Committee, because the proposal on the table is not, it significantly expands the scope of financial commitment to this program. in which the town voters voted the 20 grand in the budget. They did not vote on a revolving account. They did not vote on anything else of that nature. So the intent of what we put forward in the proposal, which I'm the one who brought forward initially to the select board, and that we brought forward to the town meeting, has to stay structured in such a way that is limited, and that those funds are going to be repaid by the estate. Outside of that, I would not support any of the recommendations that's being proposed tonight without a review of the finance committee and full board.
Yeah, and different subject. First of all, I think you have an excellent framework to which to work from. Certainly needs improvement. And one of the things that comes to my mind immediately, a lot of these people, potential clients, may be in poor health. And they will need legal advice and protection. A lot of these situations are complex, such as liens, applications, etc. So they're going to need either a close relative or someone who can serve as power of attorney or an actual lawyer. And I think that's, you gotta run into that situation.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, you can.
No one else?
Yes, I have some comments. I agree with a lot of Joe's comments. I'm not so sure about what do you mean, Joe, by limiting it to, people who will eventually sell their property through an estate? Is that what you're talking about? Their estate will sell the property if?
Yeah, it would be like a $5,000 lien on the property or something of that nature that they would repay, or it's in some repayment agreement when they sell their property. Because the intent of this was that the funds were going to come back to the town after the loan was provided to clean up the home so it doesn't get condemned.
What if the home isn't sold?
Then we get the $5 grand back
How?
through a lien.
I mean, this is very complex. I would be more in favor of smaller grants, smaller, forgivable sums of money rather than large $5,000. Well, it's not that large, but maybe to these people it might be. Loans that we have to administer and keep track of. It just seems like a full-time job to administer a program like this, and I don't know that that's what's being proposed. I would be more in favor of a scaled down approach to start, just small micro grants, not loans, to help people in these situations. I'd also advise against collecting documents such as tax returns, bank statements, so on and so forth, and strictly rely on the state and federal government authorities who already do that to award fuel assistance, mass health, which you're proposing, but also SNAP is another one.
So can I speak to that?
Sure.
So I administer the neighbor grant for the town of Adams. I'm one of the administrators for that. And one of our questions is, are you on a type of public assistance? Because that already qualifies you income wise.
Yep.
So that's why we added that question there. And sometimes if people hear they need to pay something back, they won't apply for a program. So that's where we came up with up to $2,000 can be forgiven if it will help rent dumpsters, hire a cleaning crew, do some pest control. And then beyond that, okay, then we'll be looking to get some money back, or you're needing to invest more money. So that's kind of where that $2,000, $5,000 figure came from.
Yeah, I'm in full support of a smaller grant program, and I'm not really in support of a loan program. I don't think I can support that unless there's a really, really strong structure and we understand the cost of administering that long term. But grants, I think is a simpler matter to consider.
Is the best place to start. Start small.
That's my
And
advice.
I think that's your intent. That was clear to me.
Yeah. Start with up 2,000 on the grant. No liens involved, no loans. And really stick as closely as you can to verifying if they're getting these other assistance as a means to determine eligibility rather than going to people's tax returns.
Yeah, that leaves a sour taste in your mouth. And we don't have the authority to demand anybody's tax returns or bank statements or asset accumulation.
You,
So you kind of have to get that information voluntarily. A lot of it can be observed by observing the situation at hand and how long they've been living there and the status of going forward. It's going to come down to individual decisions. Every case is going to be different.
Which is why in a lot of these, we said, it will really be a case by case
Yep.
basis.
Absolutely.
And I realize they may need more than $2,000. I get that. But the town can't really be the source of funds beyond a certain amount to help in these situations, as much as I would love to, or other people would. I don't think it's the town's responsibility. That being said, I think this is a great step as a good faith effort to help our neighbors.
Absolutely.
At least be a part of the whole overall picture of providing some aid and assistance to people in need. I think having a network of other resources, as you mentioned here, to connect people with. If it's a $10,000 job, for example, how can these folks get the rest of the money? Is even, again, if it's 5,000 is a limit, for example, we still would be able to hit the 10,000.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to, again, just go back, reflect on how we started this. I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend this policy to be, or this recommended structure to be reviewed by Finance Committee, get their recommendation, because the original intent of this was not loans, was not just grants. The intent was to provide short-term loans, or not short-term loans, but short dollar loans, and have that repaid. So my motion is to refer this to Finance Committee for their recommendation to the full board.
I think it might be useful to take back the discussion we've heard so far and have the group that put this together.
Well, I'm looking for I just made a motion, so I'm looking for a second or to kill the motion.
Second. Okay, the motion's been seconded.
All right, so the motion's been seconded.
Yeah, discussion.
You want to call the discussion?
Yeah, go ahead, have a discussion.
I'll have to look at the minutes of that town meeting. I don't ever recall the proposal that this be a loan program. Where did that come up? Could someone remind me, please?
They came up with previous select board meetings and also discussions with Finance Committee. We'll have to go back to those minutes, but that's the intent.
I'm not so sure that what we voted on a town meeting had anything to do with administering a loan program. I think it was just allocating $20,000 to a program to determine how we would administer and disperse the funds. I'm not so sure. I wouldn't support a loan program personally, so I don't think it's anything that the Finance Committee needs to review yet. Maybe later. So I'm not sure I would support the motion, but we're in discussion, so that's my opinion on it.
I agree completely with you, Dan. I think we should let the group, as stated right here, Mr. Hutchinson, the three young ladies. And if the board wants to sit down in the discussions and make their views known, we'd be happy to have the chairman do it. About
What's that?
if there's a group meeting to discuss this to discuss this matter, you'd be happy to represent the board here.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm in support of taking it back to the committee for further work on the program. More so than kicking it to the Finance Committee.
Yeah, not if it doesn't have the support of the select board, I would say.
So, and
Well, it's all about who's gonna talk first, right? We're gonna talk to the Finance Committee, or we're gonna send it back to them. And the town manager involved to look at it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some discrepancy on what the initial target was on this, so.
I think, Mark, the board is in favor of letting the town manager and the group before us work further and iron out details and find out information on the origination of this issue.
Some clarification.
Clarification.
then maybe a review by Finance Committee
Yeah.
after, but
yeah, maybe during budget season.
All right, we got a motion. on the
I think
floor.
if you go, I think, gentlemen, if you go back to the October 2023 news articles where we first talked about this, you'll see the intent. I think if you go back to our select board minutes of the same time frame, you'll see the intent.
Go ahead, Agnes.
As I recall from the meeting, that the intent was that there was gonna be a lien put on the house. But through discussion with the committee, they realized that that may not necessarily work.
I don't remember any discussion, could be wrong, of any liens. I thought this was going to be mostly not emergency, poor choice of words, but money available to rectify immediate problems in people's habitats. And I think in small doses, this is what you're intended.
Sorry, Ms. Hutchinson.
Gather that.
This is,
Yeah, you go back and
Hang
look
on,
at
Joe,
it.
1 second.
We got plenty of time in finance committee, budget season coming up.
Yeah, we can go back and
Yeah, we can
look
go
at
back.
those minutes and news reports and whatever, and compile them and include them.
What-
When we come back.
yeah, sorry for my interruptions here. It's difficult on Zoom to
That's all right.
the last line in this news article was that it is unclear what mechanism would be for reimbursement of the funds. So the intent was for the dollars to be reimbursed to the town. The intent was not for grant money. So if we're going to change the intent, then I think I would recommend that we need to not only, let's take a vote on the motion for one, to clean that up, but two, is that we need to represent the program to the town and be very clear if we're going to create a fund in which we're not seeking reimbursement. So the news articles, the publications, our select board minutes will reflect that we intended to have these dollars reimbursed to the town. Anything different than that, we need to go back to town meeting and review this program.
I think that's what we're trying to have the committee do right now, Joe. Is go back and review the whole proposal.
So do we agree that, Mr. Will, do we agree that whatever structure they come back with has to be in the intent of reimbursement to the town of the dollars provided?
I don't agree with
I agree
anything.
with that.
No.
Well, let's study all that. Let's go back to the committee, Joe. Can you, we'll study what you just said. We'll get those
Yeah.
minutes. And then we'll come back, okay?
Yep.
Call the question.
Okay, we got to vote on the motion. So,
Okay.
all those in favor?
No,
All those in favor? No?
sorry.
I'm in
All those-
favor. Sorry, Ms. Bishop, I'm in favor.
Okay, so it's 4-1, it fails. So we're gonna go back, Joe, and we're gonna come back, and then we'll revisit this, okay?
I want clarification for the warrant, for the town meeting, what the intent was.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Alyssa, can you read that stuff out and send it?
What you talking about for
Town vote, I want to know,
well, you mean for May, you mean May the 25, you want?
no, I
May
want,
24th.
I want the one that we voted on.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what they're gonna do, yeah.
Alyssa's gonna find that information to send it.
Uh,
And then
And then we'll reconvene,
Yeah.
and we'll redo.
I'll review the select board minutes from when we considered it to bring it to town meeting
Okay.
and see what we voted on there, because I don't recall it being that specific and that locked in
No.
at that time. And I don't think I would have supported it if it was, and apologize if I did support it when I go back and read it, if that's the case, but again, I don't
I
recall.
agree. I don't remember any words about liens on people's properties or anything like that.
Well,
But
I know this was part of the discussion.
It's probably part of
And
it.
that's part of what the group was trying to do, was to flesh out the different possibilities and pros and cons of.
well, I think you got your marching.
Okay, let's just do it.
Well, great work on putting together this
great.
framework. We appreciate all the hard work.
Tom did do a.
Tom and the committee.
Yeah.
Our
And-
years and, yeah,
And brought everybody together.
yeah.
Just hope you don't see this as a setback.
Oh,
But
absolutely
more
not.
so as just a necessary step in the process as we develop
And
it.
if we have to go back to the finance committee, we'll go back to the finance committee to
Yeah.
clarify it, and we'll get this
We
done.
went into this looking to build a framework to start a program, knowing that there are gonna be changes along the way.
And that's what you did.
And you did that well. Thank you.
Thank
It's a
you.
process, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
dealing with complicated situations.
It's not easy because it is
Yeah.
complicated.
And that's why I urge that you may wanna, before you get into really complicated things, make sure these people understand their legal rights and are legally of sound mind. I hate to say that, but some
That's
reason.
actually one thing we hadn't.
Yeah, yeah, you know, somebody in the family, like I said, it's a power of attorney or maybe a volunteer attorney could be available for them.
Well, it depends on how this all works out, if that's needed. If it's a grant,
Yeah, well.
it's one thing, if it's a lien, that's what you come up with. the lien.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
thank you.
the other.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the ag is there's gonna be applications for them to sign and stuff like that. They may need advice for someone to explain even that, a simple application,
Mhm.
or somebody to sign for them. So that's, I think, a big issue. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
It was great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, now we gotta go back to our. Okay. 7:30, public hearing on FY 20 CDBG grant closeout.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we open the public hearing on the fiscal year 20 CDBG grant closeout.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Pat, sorry for the delay, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, am I hearing you say to, begin?
yeah, I'm
Yes,
so
please.
sorry that it took so long. I didn't realize that was gonna take that long.
Oh, no, that was a fascinating discussion. My name is Patricia Mullins. I am here tonight representing the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission along with my colleague, Christy Lewis. For the last several years, Christy and I have been, administering on behalf of the town of Dalton, a CDBG grant, which is, translated as a community development block grant. As you may or may not know, Berkshire Regional Planning Commission administers drafts applications and submits them on behalf of various towns in Berkshire County and administers the grants should they be awarded. The FY 20 grant was originally set to run on the normal schedule of application being submitted in March and awards being made in July. That had been the norm for many, many years. And unfortunately, COVID intervened and the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, eventually renamed the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. They had their hands full trying to deal with, COVID-related issues and to roll out a program to assist, small businesses, et cetera, during the immediate, start of COVID. And so this grant actually was not awarded until the end of December of 2020. And by the time all of the administrative activities had concluded, it was probably sometime around June of 2021. We got started very, very late on this grant. What we did get was an award for $1,298,304. So this was a pretty big grant. It was 4 towns that went in together, but the town of Dalton had the lead, which in CDB parlance means that the town of Dalton assumed all fiscal responsibility, administrative responsibility for the grant. Once the grant was awarded and all the state contracts had been executed, the town of Dalton entered into a contract with BRPC to administer the grant. So this grant, the other partners in this grant included Beckett, Stockbridge, and Sheffield. And there were 2 activities in the grant, 2 major activities. And one was to continue the housing rehab, or to set up and administer a housing rehab program to benefit low to moderate income homeowners. Then the other activity was a planning activity, which was going to fund doing the Dalton ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, and the same for Stockbridge and Beckett. I'm not sure if you have the handout in front of you, but the original grant application or budget was for housing rehab. There was a total of $920,000 for housing rehab projects. So that's just for the construction part. $110,400 for program delivery. And for the planning activity, each town had its own budget based on the size of the community. And Dalton's was funded at $32,000, Beckett's at $24,000, and Stockbridge at $32,000. Sheffield at that time, although they were partnering the grant, did not require a ADA self-evaluation. They had done one previously, so that wasn't part of, they were not included in that particular activity. So the subtotal for the whole grant with all the activities and program delivery was $1,128,960, and administrative services were included for $169,344. In addition to the funding, the CDBG funding, often a CDBG grant can be more competitive if the communities or the community, the lead community and some of the other communities involved leverage some funds as well. In other words, commit some funds to the project. And through meetings with the select board in Dalton, Beckett, Stockbridge, and Sheffield, we did get some commitments, and Dalton committed $10,000. Beckett committed $12,000, and I'll explain why it was a little bit more than Dalton here in a minute. Stockbridge also committed $10,000, and Sheffield committed $5,000. Beckett had some money left over that was originally, this is interesting because I was listening to your discussion about the liens and the pros and cons. In the CDBG housing rehab program, any funds that are generated from a lien being, we have to secure these grants with a lien, but they're actually grants. So in other words, it's a forgivable lien. They last 15 years, during which the amount owed decreases each year by 1/15 of the total. And at the end of the 15 years, the grant is the loan is forgiven. So occasionally, sometime during that 15 years, a homeowner will sell the home, and or it will otherwise change hands. And at that time, the amount remaining gets paid off. And so the towns can, the lead town, in this case, it would be Dalton, but in that case, it was Beckett. They receive those funds. And if they do not exceed, this is a little complicated, if they don't exceed $35,000 in the calendar year, then the town is allowed to keep that money. So Beckett had some money left over, and they decided that they would commit all of that money to this grant. During the course of the grant, there for various reasons, Stockbridge and Sheffield we did not request funding from them, because as you'll see, as I move along through here, most of the funds, the vast majority of the funds, state of the CDBG funds were used in Dalton and Beckett. This is partly because of the issues with COVID, and partly because of mostly about COVID. A lot of people in Stockbridge especially were not really interested in the program during those very difficult days, and at the beginning of COVID. And we had a lot of people, a huge response from people in Dalton and Beckett. Sheffield had overlapping grants, and we had to finish one before we could start the other. And by that time, we actually had another new grant in Sheffield. So as it turned out, they did not end up with any projects coming out of this, and Stockbridge only had one. So the vast majority of the funds were spent in Dalton and Beckett, and primarily in terms of the actual budget, Dalton ended up with quite a bit more than the other towns, which, you know, as a lead town, that was an okay thing. And in terms of projects, Dalton got 10 projects, Beckett got 7, and Stockbridge got 1. So number 6 on my cheat sheet here, if you have it, and if not, I think that you can probably get a copy after this meeting. During the implementation of the grant, we had 2 amendments to the grant. Amendments only happen when you are requesting a big change in the grant, or in the intent of the grant and purpose. And that didn't actually happen, but what did happen is the towns of Beckett and Stockbridge found they no longer needed that funding in order to complete their ADA self-evaluation and transition plans. That was because it took so long for this grant to get approved and awarded because of COVID, et cetera, that the town administrators in both of those towns decided that in the meantime, they would seek alternate funding, and they went to the Massachusetts Office on Disability and received the funding from that source. So that left us with money in the planning activity that we did not need for that. And amendment number 1 was to move $24,000 from the planning activity to the housing rehab program, and that $24,000 came from Beckett's ADA, or it came from the planning for the ADA in Beckett. Amendment number 2 was a transfer of $32,000 from the planning activity to the housing rehab program, because Stockbridge did not need to use it for the ADA. So what that meant was that the planning budget was decreased by $56,000, and the housing rehab program grew by that much, for a total of $976,000 was spent on housing rehab. Let's see. I think that I want to point out that this was a really tough time to implement housing rehab. We were, we went right about the time that we started working on this grant. All of a sudden, everybody was staying home, isolated with masks on, and we were working from home, which that in and of itself did not really slow the staff down, but it certainly slowed down the contractors, and the homeowners showed a real lack of interest in having, they wanted their projects, but they didn't want to have anybody in their homes. They didn't want to have anybody inside their homes. Contractors were struggling to keep their crews working. Some of them were coming down with COVID, and then that meant that they could not, work for a certain amount of time afterwards, at least a couple of weeks. So it was a very tough time to get these projects rolling. And then we also encountered problems with contractors not wanting to bid on projects because the cost of materials just skyrocketed, and contractors would bid on something and then find out, when it was time to start working on it, that they couldn't purchase the materials for the amount that they had actually bid for. So there were a lot of things like that going on at the time, which is kind of easy to forget about it now, but it was a tough time to be implementing one of these grants. in this program, housing rehab, the limit that we are allowed to spend on a project as per the CDBG rules varies from one grant to the next, and at that time it was $40,000. At that point, if our bids came in much higher than that, we had to ask for a single case waiver from EOHLC. And we had to do that many more times on this grant than we had previously. We had some small projects that were only like a roof or something like that. And so that was not so bad. There was a handful that came in under 40,000, but quite a few of them, I would say almost the majority of them, we had to ask for single case waivers from EOHLC. So those projects overall in this particular grant ran from 18,000 to 105,000. And that upper end is just something we had never experienced previously, but it doesn't go down. You know, the effects of COVID and the pandemic have kind of, you know, mellowed out now, but we're still seeing that our projects come in higher and higher in terms of the bidding. So much more so that with the new grant that I know you've heard of, the FY24 grant, EOHLC has set $60,000 as their limit for a home without lead paint and $70,000 for a home with lead paint. And so that's the limit before we have to go to EOHLC to ask for a single case waiver. So the money doesn't go as far anymore. Along with the projects that I'm talking about, there's always a handful of projects, and there was one like this in Sheffield, where we do a lot of we accept applications. Overall, we screened and reviewed 62 applications for this grant. We always have a handful that kind of get rolling. We do lead tests, we do Mass Historic Commission notifications, we do inspections, etc. And for one reason or another, they don't go forward. So there were 4 like that, including one that occurred in Sheffield. So we had 10 projects completed in Dalton for a total of $653,193. We had 7 projects completed in Beckett at a cost of $288,569. And we have 1 project in Stockbridge for a cost of $33,346. All of these projects are backed by liens, and those liens are the town Dalton is the lien holder for all of them, regardless of which town they are in. So that is something that we will monitor. You know, the town will receive a list of these liens. We've already filed them. You know, for the next 15 years, there are going to be people in Beckett that owe Dalton some money, and also Stockbridge, obviously. But some of them, you know, most of our homeowners will never sell the homes. They plan to live there, you know, and age in place, etc. But every now and then somebody does sell a home, or something else happens that causes it to change hands, and at that point, the lien will be paid off, and the town of Dalton will receive those funds. Let's see, what else? I'm thinking maybe this would be a good time to ask if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I do. You did 10 projects in all. I know they were home construction, but what were the nature of some of those projects? What type of work did they do on these homes?
So we do a lot of roofs. We do a lot of siding. We do a lot of windows. And that, so building envelope type things, on the outside. On the inside, it can be plumbing, it can be heating systems. If there is any home that was built prior to 1978 has to be tested for lead paint. And since this is a federal program, the requirement is that If we find any lead paint that work on, eliminating that, hazard, has to be part of the project. So, as you know, in Berkshire County, we've got a lot of older homes. And I would say the majority of them have to have lead tests. Every now and then we have, a home, there's always a handful in every grant that where they don't have any lead, despite the fact that they were built before 78. And that might just be because people over the years have done a lot of work on their home. They may have repainted it at some point and you know, both inside and out. And one way or another, that lead paint hazard has been eliminated. But when lead paint is there, that's an expensive part of the project as well, is eliminating that. So we do some septics, and you know, it really just it really depends on what the need is. It can CDBG can handle a really broad spectrum of project types. Along with, you know, this, I probably should say that this program is one where we are on a daily basis working with a population that just needs help and can't get it anywhere else. And a lot of the parameters that you have set on the previous on the program you're discussing in the previous few minutes, you know, apply to this grant. So when I say we received those applications and we screened the applicants, we went through that process because in this case, by law, we're required to look at 8 weeks of pay stubs and or any social security statements. We only look at taxes when somebody is self-employed, which may sound, you know, strange, but the thing is, when someone is self-employed, we have to see what their losses were, you know, and that is how we determine what their actual income is. So the only way we can do that is to look at their federal taxes, but we avoid that unless somebody's self-employed. We also do check with the town to make sure that people are not behind on their property taxes. And if they are, then we have to find a solution to that through some type of cooperative agreement before we move forward. And we also have requirements based on the federal law regarding floodplain. Location in floodplains means that there has to be, obviously they have to have homeowners insurance in the first place, but they have to have flood insurance if they're in the floodplain. So there's a lot of parallels between this and the program you were referring to previously.
Ted, does this board this evening have to take any action to close out this loan program?
I'm really sorry. I can't understand you. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. Want to do about it?
John wants to know if the board has to take any action to close out this grant.
Actually, no, I mean, you don't have to take any action at this time. We are wrapping up the last project, and we're closing September 30th. And we have about 45 days to file the final report. And then the whole closeout process is, I file the report and EOHLC sends something back to me. At that point, I may have to ask for your signature on, you know, a statement as far as the expenditures. And then it goes back and forth a couple of times, and most of that is done in a grant management system, a computer system. But you don't have to take any votes tonight. However, if there's any member of the public that is present or is not present and just wants to comment on this, on the proceedings, I think what would be helpful if you would state where they could send their where they could either call or send their written comments to the town.
Yes, having this public hearing is one of the actions required.
Can I ask any of the audience members?
Any of the audience have a question or anything?
Comment?
I have a question, actually.
Go ahead, Joe.
Bob. Pat, great verbal presentation. Is there a slide deck, any other material we can put our hands on to review? Maybe it was emailed to me, I just missed it. That's one. Number two, are there any stats we can look at for this grant about equitable access or equitable access to the grants through the application process? If I'm doing the math correct, and I think I heard 10 homes in Dalton at a value of 650,000, that's an average of 65K per home. That's a pretty big grant. So I would like to just understand more the detail of the impact of those 10 homes versus, it's like, are they in the $500,000 value versus a $250,000 value home? What's the spread across the program, et cetera, for equitable access to these dollars?
So we don't.
Just out of curiosity, it's not.
We don't track the assessed value. I think the way that the projects are selected, there is always on our part recognition of the extra effort and involvement that the lead town has to put forth in order to help us attain this grant in the first place and go through all the fiscal responsibilities that are related to it. So it is always, and we always tell the towns this up during the planning phases before we've submitted the grant, that the lead town will receive additional projects beyond what the other towns do.
Yeah, but I guess my question is really going towards, if it's a $500,000 home, that homeowner should be able to get a home equity loan to do their own improvements versus somebody that's struggling under a home that's $220,000, $250,000.
We seldom see, all I can tell you is that we seldom see situations where our homeowners could do that. So in other words, most of them are not worth that, not assessed that highly. Occasionally there would be one, but we're also looking, according to the program rules, we are looking at income, strictly at their income, and most of them have very, very limited income because most of them are to be honest, in Berkshire County, most of our clients are retired and they're living on very small.
Well, that kind of goes to my point, retirees versus young families struggling. So I would like to get access to the equitable data between age ranges, demographics, and value of those homes, so I can understand more about the impact of Dalton. Because if it's just going to retirees in a low income because they don't have disposable income versus a young family who are, whether or not a police officer own a home or, because our police officers and teachers in Berkshire County don't make a lot of money. So I don't know what the income thresholds are, but I'm very interested to understand the demographic equitable split of those grant dollars.
I think we can provide that for you. Are you mostly interested in the demographics, the family, or the household demographics? We have to collect that information in general, and we do have some applicants that are younger and
yeah, that's exactly what, and the home values, right? Because it's 10 projects, just doing the math, 650,000, 65K a project on average. That's a pretty hefty project, that's vinyl siding plus roof plus windows.
Right.
Or
absolutely,
or
but
plus.
all of those elements have become so much more expensive just in the last few years.
Right.
That it's a question of whether or not, of course, real estate as values have skyrocketed as well. Right. So it's a question of whether or not,
equity is top of mind for everybody in politics now. So I just want to kind of understand the spread. So
absolutely. And HUD does set the income limits that we go. The guidelines. So that's something that we don't determine. We have to follow the HUD rules on that.
No, understood. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Pat.
Any other questions? Okay, any other comments or anything?
Were there any unused portion of the funds? Did you use everything?
We used everything. We always try to use everything. It's really every now and then there's a need to send money back on one of these grants, but we try really hard not to do that.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's great.
I do, before we sign off on this, I realize that there's some people that we really wanted to thank. First and foremost, I really want to thank, Christy Lewis. In June of this year, I retired from full-time at, BRPC, and I am working, remotely and coming up to Berkshire County, you know, on and off. But Christy is my go-to person. And she is the one who is the initial contact for anyone who is applying to this program. She will continue in that role with the FY24 grant that that Beckett and Dalton have together. I, you know, just absolutely could not run this grant without her. So I want to mention that. But I also want to mention, you know, that Tom Hutchinson and your town accountant, Sandra Albano, who was actually the transition person. I applied for this grant when Ken Walto was still the town manager. Sandra had to take over. It was nerve-wracking with everything else that she had to do during you know, that transition. And so, you know, I really value their help with this. Dawn Fahey, your town treasurer, and Alyssa Machino. I mean, we just could not do without the people in town hall that have that we've worked with over these years. And also, obviously, the select boards in all of the towns and the other town administrators. So I just wanted to thank all of you for helping to make this happen, and for your volunteer time and effort on all of these grants. And I want to say that I'm very excited for Beckett and Dalton that you have another grant coming up, because there is a tremendous need for this program. And it was quickly established that the highest interest was in Dalton and Beckett, along with Sheffield, which is being covered by other grants. And Stockbridge also will have a grant this coming up. So we just need to keep doing what we can to preserve affordable housing in Berkshire County. And this is one program that helps to do that. And so I guess that's about it. I just, you know,
on that note, Pat, is there an opportunity in the previous conversation? Is there an opportunity for a health agent to look at homes across Dalton and say, here are some homes that are really, really in trouble, and get them to apply for this other bigger program?
So we do try. We work along, or we welcome the input. Let's put it that way. We welcome the input. The program has a you know, a particular way that we have to have an application from a homeowner. That's where we have to start.
Yep.
And in general, we do first come, first served. However, there's a lot of paperwork that has to be submitted by the homeowner. So they may send in their initial application and not necessarily, and they might be the first one to, you know, to send in their application. But what we're looking at is completed applications, including all of the financial information that we need from them in order to determine their eligibility, their income eligibility. So it's a first come, first served program. When there are emergency situations, I think that we do our best to work with the public health officers and other people within the community that are trying to assist. I can't point out specific instances of that, but I can say that we have.
But it sounds like the point being that the application process has to be complete, and sometimes that completeness is not there.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And sometimes the project, we can see right away that the project is, even with that increased amount of funding that we can spend on individual projects, it may not be feasible for us to do the project. I mean, we occasionally hire, obviously, if we're doing septics and everything, we have to hire engineers to design the system and everything. We occasionally will hire an engineer, a structural engineer, to look at a project for us and everything. But we can't rebuild a house from the ground up. primarily we're doing roofs, windows, doors, siding, septics, plumbing, and electrical, you know, but if somebody needs all of those things, you know, if they need every last thing, it makes the project, so expensive that we have to look at the feasibility, as well, and determine whether or not we can take that on.
Thank you, Bear.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Super.
Thank you.
Looking forward-
It's been a pleasure working with the town of Dalton and good luck with your next grant. I appreciate working with
Thank
you.
you. Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the public hearing on the fiscal year 2020 Community Development Block Grant closeout.
Okay, motion been made second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, finally. The emergency management.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, folks.
Okay.
Bye.
Katie Hebert, Director of Emergency Management.
We'll make the assistant director.
We put together a PowerPoint presentation. You should be able to find that in your packet. The handout, we made sure that there were some lines in there in case you have questions, you want to jot them down. We also are making our PowerPoint available to get that. Making it available to everybody who's doing this in remotely. Honorable Select Board members. We stand before you to provide a comprehensive overview of our town's emergency management preparedness. Our team is small, but we're mighty, and we are committed to safeguarding the lives and property of our community members. And we believe that through open collaboration and communication with this board, we can enhance our abilities to respond effectively to any crisis. Emergency management is a cyclical process that involves several distinct phases. While different organizations may use slightly varying terminology, the core concepts are consistent. Here are the primary phases. Number one, mitigation. I know that the town just completed a great mitigation project where identifying potential hazards, we figured out what disasters could hit our area. Hurricanes, we've seen floods, we've seen them. Train accidents, I'm not wishing anything bad on anybody. Or earthquakes, we've run the gamut here in Berkshire County. Developing and implementing preventative measures, we create plans to reduce the damage these disasters can cause. This might involve building stronger structures, improving drainage systems, and the like. Strengthening infrastructure, we make sure our roads, bridges, and other essential structures can withstand disasters. Public education and awareness campaigns. We educate people about disaster preparedness and encourage them to take steps to protect themselves and their families. Preparedness, really the meat and potatoes of what we're here to talk about tonight. Preparedness is about being ready for emergencies, like planning ahead so we can handle whatever comes our way. Here's how we do it. Developing emergency plans, creating detailed emergency plans for different types of emergencies, hurricanes, floods, water distribution problems, septic problems, power outages, and the like. Training personnel. We teach people how to respond to emergencies to carry out their roles in the plan. Assembling emergency supplies. We gather emergency supplies like food, water, and first aid kits to be prepared for emergencies. Establishing communication systems. We set up ways of communicating during emergencies like emergency alert system, code red, and the like. Conducting drills and exercises. We practice our emergency plans through drills. We exercise them to make sure that we are ready to respond effectively. Response. Here's some more meat and potatoes for you. Response is about taking action during emergencies. It's like putting our plan into action and providing help where it is needed the most. Here's what we do. Activating emergency plans. We put our pre-developed plans into action, assigning roles and responsibilities to everyone involved. Deploying resources. We send out emergency personnel, equipment, and supplies to the affected areas. Providing emergency care. We can treat injured or sick people and provide them with necessary medical aid. Search and rescue operations. We search for people who may be missing or in danger and rescue them if needed, if necessary, excuse me. Protecting life and property, we do everything we can to save lives and property and protect them from further damage. Recovery. It's about getting things back to normal after an emergency. It's like rebuilding and repairing the damage that is caused. I remember when I responded to Hurricane Michael, and we were still down there the 2 weeks after Hurricane Michael had hit. And I was new on my response team. And I asked my team lead, I said, why are they working on the playground? Why would you want to work on a playground after this natural disaster just came through and leveled it? It's about recovery. It's about getting that sense of normalcy back again. Damage assessment. We can assess the damage areas caused by the emergency, debris removal. We can clear debris like fallen trees, damaged buildings to make the area safe. Provide temporary housing assistance, temporary shelters, and assist people who have lost their homes or belongings. Economic recovery efforts. We help businesses and communities recover financially by providing loans, grants, and other supports through state and federal resources. Infrastructure rebuilding. Again, we can work with our town partners on roads, on rebuilding damaged roads and other essential infrastructure. Defining mass care. This is really important for us, Morgan and I, as far as our plans go moving forward. Mass care, what is it? Mass care is one of the core emergency support functions defined by FEMA. Mass care is defined as congregate sheltering, feeding, distribution of emergency supplies, and reunification of children with their parents, legal guardians, and adults with their families. In Massachusetts, this role is expected to be filled by local level responders for 72 hours. We are on our own for 3 days, right? It's an interesting thing to wrap your head around. The goals of mass care: sheltering, feeding and nutrition, emergency medical aid, family reunification and communication, and distribution of emergency supplies. Mass care and CERT, community emergency response and emergency management phases. Response: mass care is activated immediately after disaster to provide essential services such as shelter, food, water, clothing, and medical care to those affected. It often involves establishing and operating evacuation centers and shelters. If you're savvy to the plans, you know those currently exist. Recovery: mass care continues to be essential during the recovery phases as people transition from emergency shelters to more permanent housing. It also involves providing support services to help individuals and families rebuild their lives.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about where the CERT program came from. So the CERT program was originally created by Los Angeles Fire Department. They came down to Mexico City after a major earthquake and found that the first people that were responding to the earthquake weren't first responders, it was people's neighbors. So what happened was that 400 lives were saved by neighbors helping neighbors, but they also lost 100 rescuers because they didn't know how to respond safely. So the city of Los Angeles developed a program for its own people to create basically first responders out of neighbors. So CERT plays a critical role in preparedness, response, and recovery. CERT teams are trained in basic disaster response skills, including fire safety, search and rescue, first aid, and disaster psychology. This training equips them to respond effectively during an emergency. CERT members can also provide immediate assistance to their neighbors, like we were just talking about, and the community in the aftermath of the disaster until professional responders can arrive. They can also help organize spontaneous volunteers and provide support to emergency responders. CERT teams can also continue to support the community during the recovery phase by assisting with damage assessment, helping neighbors, and participating in community recovery efforts. There's still a PowerPoint. Yeah, we sent you the wrong version of it.
So sorry, apologies.
So the goals of a CERT program in this community are first and foremost to save the lives of those living in this town through education. The topics, we talked about the topics that were covered in CERT. The second goal of CERT is to supplement professional first responders in the event of a disaster. We're not talking about replacing first responders in everyday life. That's not going to happen. But in the event of a disaster, our first responders are going to be overwhelmed. It is a fact. So we need to have people, like we said, neighbors helping neighbors to help save lives in this community. So I want to talk about what CERT costs the community. Right now, CERT is being primarily funded through emergency management grants. We use the EMPG grant from last year, and we'll be using part of it for this year for mass care initiatives. Also, with a CERT program, we can apply for the Citizen Corps program, which is a competitive $5,000 grant to help equip us with things that CERT would need. So for example, we can use it to buy sheltering products or other things that we might need in the mass care setting. So what we gain from this, though, is we gain a vetted group of volunteers who can assist at a moment's notice with things such as light search and rescue, evacuation, temporary sheltering, and operations center staffing. Also, on another note, financially, volunteer hours actually count as a soft match if we get any FEMA funding for a disaster, which means that it saves the town money and what we would have to match for a FEMA response. We do already have the dates and times set up for a pilot CERT class. I would encourage anybody that is interested, that is here at the meeting or watching online, to attend. The Stationery Factory has agreed to host us in an ADA accessible space. It's going to be October, November. It's going to be 4 4-hour classes. I will have a sign-up list available at the fire department, and I will make my email available so that people can reach out to me if they would like to sign up.
If you guys would like to get that to me, I can get it out on my Facebook page.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And are you looking for people, from the different neighborhoods in Dalton for that?
Preferably, right now, we're just trying to get the program off the ground. I want to see who's interested. If we get 50 people signing up, that's awesome. Right now, the plan is to have 10 people interested, go through the first pilot program, kind of go through our paces, make sure the program is easily digestible for everybody, and then move on from there. The program doesn't cost us anything to run. We just want to see what the interest is.
That's great.
And how can people sign up?
So I'm gonna have a sign up sheet at the fire department. We also have a link that we can have people sign up through online.
That'd be great.
Could you put it on our town website?
Yes,
We can share it with a person who can put it onto the town
Yeah.
website.
more accurate, yeah.
Yeah, in addition to that, same town website there, idea, Bob, is the town newsletter. I'm sure Alyssa has it on her list, but there's different channels. The point being, there's different channels to do outreach here, so for sure.
Is there any way of filming these so we can put them on Dalton cable to teach more people easier?
So there's, right now, there's a link available. I forget what group is offering it. I think it was Los Angeles Fire Department that offers it online for free for people who want to see it. There is a hands-on section that you just can't get from an online class.
Okay.
So there's first aid, we're planning on doing an MCI type drill. And that's just the stuff you can't do through an online class, but all the information is available online for anybody who wants it.
This is great.
Yeah.
I know we talked about it a couple of years ago, and I was wondering, when's it gonna go? When's it gonna go? This is great. I'm glad we're at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Very good
you're
work,
doing.
and looking forward to seeing this develop. 4-hour courses, you said,
Yeah,
over the course of 2 months?
right.
Good. Is there anything from the select board that you need us to help you with?
How about a slot on your agenda in 6 months?
You can do anytime
Got
you
it.
want.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, number 9. ARPA update and recession.
Yes, thank you. They're doing a lot of ARPA business over the next few months as we begin to close out the grant. You all have something that says ARPA proposals. In the pack. I'd like to scratch the top item additional resources
Okay,
and focus on what's below that. We currently have $52,961 available to be committed. I had a staff meeting last week and requested that the staff come up with ideas for funding. The vast majority of them came from our DPW superintendent. You may recall that there was a previous item to replace some windows and doors at the town garage. The cost for that is estimated at $13,500. To that, the superintendent has added a couple of items, $10,000 for the North Street sewer pump generator. That was approved in fiscal year 21, but never spent. Now the generator has failed and needs to be replaced. Also, the superintendent is requesting $16,000 for two 40-yard octagon dumpsters. We currently rent or lease those, and we would save $10,000 a year, so payback in less than 2 years if we own them. We do not currently have the funds for putting money towards Pleasant Street paving. Well, that depends on two more items. First, you'll see that there's a request to rescind $5,000 for the mini-ARPA grant for the Historical Commission's pursuit of a second historical district. The Historical Commission is here, the co-chairs and more are here to speak, to try to get a shed behind the Hoos House, for which they would need $5,000 for materials. It would be constructed next spring by vocational school students, but we could contract for it before the end of the year, and then that counts as being committed for ARPA purposes. Other ideas that came up with town staff were money to replace old and malfunctioning office furniture and equipment, including a number of locking file cabinets that are showing their age. All of those requests together come to $49,500, just about $3,000 short of the $52,900 available now. So the actions that I'm requesting are first to rescind the $5,000 mini grant for the second historical district, and then adding those 5 expenses to our ARPA projects.
How much is left then?
About $3,000.
Why don't we dispose of it now and into the Orchard Road project? So we can close this.
Yeah, it actually, it won't be closed until, we have to get these things contracted for and know the actual prices. I will be coming back at least once more, probably 2 or 3 times, with smaller and smaller amounts of money to be assigned.
Let's go with what Tom says.
Yep, absolutely.
I need a motion.
okay, let's start with the rescission. Mr. Chairman, I move that we rescind the $5,000 mini ARPA grant for the Historical Commission second historical district work.
Sorry.
Motion's been made to second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, and then,
Do them all as presented.
yeah, well,
I got one quick question. Tom said that there's 5 on here, I'm counting 6.
yeah, you take off it's the Pleasant Street,
Okay, take it that one.
it's unfortunate that we can't allocate some funds to that.
Well, we will be getting even more fair share money this year. And that was $120,000 last year, so
I would
And
say,
I think go a long way toward any cost.
I would say Pleasant Street needs to be on that,
Oh,
at the top of the list.
oh,
Paid probably in weeks.
Oh, getting paid anyways.
I just had approved, but Kevin and I wanted to approve,
Okay,
so that's gonna happen. I think October 4th.
that's awesome. That's great news. Okay,
October 4th this year?
That's when it's supposed to start.
all right.
Great.
Fantastic.
In that case, we've got, just to run down the list, we've got $5,000 for the historical commission shed, 13,500 for the broken windows and door replacements, DPW. 10,000 towards for the sewer pump, and 2 dumpsters and for 16 grand, 5,000 for office equipment. Those are the 5, right?
yes.
Second.
Oh, sorry. You want to get this done? All right,
I'm getting fun.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the following ARPA expenditures as presented by the town manager, except that we are striking 26,500 that was proposed for Pleasant Street from the list.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, good work, Tom.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and what's the balance? I'm sorry, Tom, what's the balance in the opera funds now?
About $3,000.
May I make a recommendation for that money?
Go ahead, Joe.
I'd like to recommend that we take that 3 and we have an employee holiday kind of appreciation gathering. Do a nice job for our employees. This is COVID dollars that come out of it. It might be a nice little thing for our employees across the board.
Not a bad idea.
Well, for one, I'm opposed to it because last year, Alicia and the staff worked exceptionally, extraordinarily hard to put on that day. And it came that day on a Sunday, and I was the only selectman that showed up. So I think there's something wrong with this scenario, that's all.
Was that the volunteer? That might have been the
It
volunteer.
was an employee appreciation day, yeah. Well.
Well, I would say the assumption is we should ask board members what their conflicts were, Mr. Bull, before that.
Yeah,
But yes,
assuming that we attended because we didn't want to, I would assume that we did not attend because we had other engagements and it wasn't.
Yeah, but we knew about it like time in advance now, so we could have postponed the date or something. But I guess it wasn't important enough. I don't see why it's important enough now.
Well, I don't believe that.
all right, then I strike the motion. We'll not do a celebration for the employees. Come on.
That may have been the volunteer appreciation day.
It shouldn't prevent us from considering an allocation of $3,000 to employee appreciation event.
I just wanted to allocate it towards the Orchard Road Fund. And Tom told me other plans. Now we're gonna do this?
Well, the Orchard Road Fund is already funded with $1 million.
I fail to see how the 3,000 would necessarily be helpful for that, but it could be very helpful for something like this. Or we can reconsider that at the next meeting, maybe put forth a proposal for that at the next meeting. Is that a motion, Joe, or? You're just talking?
Yes, no, it was a motion because in the agenda, it says action, discussion, and any other ARPA items. So I'm using that agenda item to make this motion.
Second on Joe's motion.
Second.
Okay,
And Joe? Yeah,
go ahead, Dan.
can you just repeat the motion, please?
Yeah, to use, I don't know what the number would be, but to use a portion of the $3,000 to have a holiday celebration. Thank you for our employees and our staff.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Well,
Okay, it passes 4-1.
You can do all that.
Okay, number 10, review and approve the special town meeting.
Yes, you will notice that the current warrant has only 4 articles on it. There were at 1.7, but there is no vocational education article on this because the numbers that we have now, which are fairly solid between well into September now, are that we have 22 students signed up for 23 positions that we funded. There are 4 students who are waitlisted, and one of them is at number 4 in the list. However, Sandy contacted the relevant school officials who feel that at this point, the numbers are pretty well set, and that they do not expect any of the waitlisted students to go into a vocational school at this point. So we don't really need to move that budget either up or down at this point. There may be one more that comes in, it's unlikely, but we have that funding available if that happens. So we seem to be in a good position there. Also, we do not need any additional money for electric vehicle charging stations. We should be able to have that funded entirely through state incentives and companies wishing to establish their footprint in the area. Finally, there is no need to add money to the health insurance line because we had an unexpected break in enrollment. So we do not expect that line to go over as we had been earlier. That leaves us with 4 articles. The first is to amend the appropriation for account number 710, which is our debt excluded line. And that will be coming down. It will be coming down about $48,668. So that's good. We can actually reduce the town budget there. That said, Article 2 is saying if we will appropriate money for the final engineering and construction of town hall. I'm so sorry. Well, it says plumbing. We may not be ready, we will not be ready with a number for the plumbing by this town meeting. But it's okay if we do something that's a smaller scope than what's in the article. We can't expand the scope. More on that. We expect to have good, not to exceed numbers for the final engineering and construction by the finance committee meeting a week from Wednesday. I'm practically certain we will have numbers by the town meeting itself. The plumbing was problematic as a number of the companies that we approached would not engineer both the outside and the inside of the project. We now know at least one company that will, and Jeff and I are preparing a request for quotes that will enable us to at least get the preliminary engineering for the plumbing done, which has already been paid for through an ARPA. That's an outstanding ARPA commitment that we haven't used yet. So that part of the project is not now ready to be funded, except for preliminary design engineering. So, yeah.
I apologize to interrupt you here. On the motions and explanations, you have Article 1 talking about the students attending vocational school.
Yeah,
At least on the one I have.
sorry. And Joe, I'm sorry, I don't think there are some things that we didn't have time to send out. But I do have draft motions and explanations. There are now 4 motions and explanations to match the articles. I didn't get the final result until later today, so I apologize, Joe, for not getting that out by email.
That's okay,
Okay,
Tom.
yes.
No worries. I'll follow.
This is helpful.
Let me skip to Article 4, again, that's still on, that's an amendment to our bylaws, which allows us to forego a complicated bureaucratic solution that would be ongoing to social equity in allowing cannabis operations in town. This solution, which the board has previously discussed and agreed to, is to have a change in our bylaws which allows only social equity applicants to get licenses for the next 3 years. Again, over my 3 years here so far, I've received only 2 phone calls asking about the possibility. Neither one followed up. So I don't anticipate this being a big deal. However, due to the Cannabis Control Commission's regulations, we do need to take action on it. This seems to be the simplest and best action to take. Moving back to Article 3, the Conservation Commission has had its chair step down. The chair is often the member of the Conservation Commission who does the work that would otherwise be done by a conservation agent. This involves going out and identifying where wetland plants might be affected by any kind of homeowner activity or business activity. Bob can probably speak to this much more, much better than I can. The upshot is that I did speak with Bob. I did find out a number of compensation schemes for conservation agents. And we would not exceed, I think, what I'm proposing, which is a 8 to 10 hour a week position at $30.11 an hour for professional assistance in enforcing our Wetlands Protection Act and Rivers Protection Act, both of which involve, in the best case, some specialized training in conservation. And Bob, if you'd like to speak any more, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I was chair probably for about 23, 24 years on that, and I did all that crap. And it's a lot, it adds a lot to the position. I mean, it's, you have to do everything. You have to get all that education and stuff. I am no longer part of the board, but the chair stepped down, and that's a huge problem because nobody has stepped up. But as far as this one goes, I think it's a much needed thing because it will take a huge load off of anybody wanting to be the chair. Because it's the way the laws we read now, they're ever changing. You gotta keep up on that stuff. You're constantly going out, checking on stuff. And you do, you need better. You need to know soils, you need to know wetland plants, you need to know hydrology. So, and you need a professional person to go do that.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Sorry, Bob. I thought you were done. Sorry. Just a quick observation. We just approved a ton of ARPA dollars. And this sounds like a position that could be covered by ARPA without asking the town for additional money for this position for the remainder of the fiscal year. Is that fair?
First of all, they gotta hire one, Joe, and they're hard to find, to be honest with you. The city of Pittsfield has one.
Okay, so they might slip into next year then on the recruitment, so we wouldn't be able to quote unquote contract. Okay, that's right, Bob. Thank you for that. Yep.
The thought's been given to this endeavor of regionalization.
Yeah, that's what you can do. You could hire somebody, the person that gets Windsor, because that's a part-time similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Or Israel, or all of them together.
Yeah, because that would make it actually more attractive for that person to come in.
Right.
It's gonna be hard to hire somebody for 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
So if they get that, plus Windsor, and there's a couple other towns looking also, because it's still changing. But the big thing right now with the commission is they legally cannot meet because they don't have a chair. And I talked to Tim Zessen about it. They can't post an agenda without somebody acting as a chair, so that's a more immediate problem.
No. Hey, whatever happens, that's the end of the world.
Well, guess where it defects to?
But
Here.
One thing I would add, Joe,
I think, John, you make an excellent chairman.
no.
is this would appear to be something that might come back for recurring requests to town. And funding it with ARPA dollars, maybe initially might be okay, but I think ultimately, I think we should let the town decide if they want to, allocate the money to this type of position and then support it in the future. I think that's better than us just saying, we're gonna create a conservation agent with ARPA dollars, you know, with 5 people deciding it.
No, it'd be better for the town to decide that.
I think it's okay that it's goes before the voters, as opposed to.
But if there's any ARPA money left over, apparently, we just drained the, tank here, but
I wouldn't worry about it.
we might wanna hire somebody on an interim basis and tie this over until we can.
Yeah.
Adjudicate this at the annual town meeting.
It's a
But
bit.
I think you need
Sure.
somebody right away.
If they
It's
can
not
find
gonna be over.
Yeah,
that's
well,
for sure.
or also somebody from another town.
Yeah.
Like the Veterans Day, we share with North Adam and Adam.
So that's it, 4 articles.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, did I miss article?
Yes,
That's unfortunate.
it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob, did I miss article 2 that we don't know the amount being requested yet?
What,
I
John?
was asking.
Article 2.
I think I missed article 2, so we don't know the amount that's gonna be requested as of yet.
No, I very much hope to have a not to exceed number. You may recall that we actually just funded the preliminary design and engineering not too long ago. Month and a half ago or something like that, so, it's early to get, we're not gonna have a final number, but, the engineer said that they could get us a not to exceed number, and we could authorize spending from, my proposal is, capital stabilization. And, then when we get the final, cost estimate, we'll know, you know, how much of that we'll actually have to use. Or we'll have a good idea how much we'll actually have to use. Bids may always come in higher than cost estimate. But yeah, I expect to have that number a week from Wednesday for the finance committee meeting prior to the following Wednesday town meeting.
Good.
Okay, motion to accept.
And the warrant and the motions and explanations will be posted with that number, Tom?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the special town meeting warrant as presented.
John, you second it?
Yeah.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. I think we got it right here.
Town manager update, what was that?
Go ahead, Tom.
Actually, there's the, confirmatory, yeah, if you could take a vote to sign the confirmatory order of taking, that would probably be legally best. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the signatures on the confirmatory order of taking for the LP Adams easement.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just one note for the public, this is because there was a small error in the documents presented. A book and page citation was erroneously included that shouldn't have been. This order corrects that by referring to the plan, which did have the correct information.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Town manager update. Mark, would
Yes, thank you. First, something that will, I hope, lay to rest any confusion about the Orchard Street, Orchard Road project. For those concerned about the Orchard Road project, the time between the town notification of the grant and now has been spent in obtaining the necessary easements. The state contract was executed on January 24th. We hired a designer very quickly, and I received an email on February 22nd informing me that easements would be necessary before going out to bid. I found the name of a recommended appraiser and wrote them the next day for quotes for both Orchard Road and the L.P. Adams easement. And they replied they would get me quotes, appraisals. I got the money for the quotes from the select board and from ARPA fund and hired an appraiser. We got preliminary plans and figures and brought the items to town meeting for the necessary approval. We have final plans and costs. I received the orders of taking from town council and got them signed by the select board on August 19th. I approved and submitted the final plans and the orders of taking with the registry of deeds. As of September 12th, I was still waiting for the final notice of taking, offer letter, application for eminent domain damages payment, pro tanto receipt, and eminent domain release from town council. We got that all recently. The select board just signed it at your last meeting, and now we've signed an amendation to that. At this point, we have sent out the letters for eminent domain release. When that process is complete, we will be prepared to bid the work. All that said, it was already late in January when the grant contract was signed by the state to bid a project for this construction year. By the time the easements were approved, construction companies were well into their planned season. We will be bidding during the usual time for such activity, the fall preceding the construction season in which the work is to be done. This is when companies are looking to schedule their next year and are at their most competitive, which we anticipate will lead to lower prices. That's how Orchard Road came to be where it is now.
Thank you.
I have been talking with the other Central Berkshire Regional School District municipal managers about the possibility of having a comprehensive agreement for regional vocational school transportation. The original thought of the managers was to have an intermunicipal agreement for a series of 3-year contracts, but I understand that CBRSD might be looking to make it part of the regional CBRSD agreement. I've spoken with Dick Locatell, who's concerned that if the current formula for allocating costs is included, Dalton may be at a disadvantage, and who suggested a formula based on miles traveled. He did acknowledge, though, that with 3 separate and widely spaced vocational schools, and the number of students going to any of them varying widely, the situation is different from the current CBRSD transportation. I will keep all this in mind as we go forward talking about the potential for that kind of an agreement. I have been given to understand that the relationship between the health agent and the stationery factory has improved considerably, and I've written for confirmation of that to the relevant manager, though I have not yet received a reply. So this is an interim update on that. I spoke with representatives from MEMA regarding Walker Brook. They understand the situation and agree that the project as currently developed would probably not be competitive. They suggested other grant programs and also agreed that finding out the extent of the current blockage would be the next best step. the building and grounds superintendent or I are pursuing a lead for engineering for both inside and outside town hall basement plumbing, which has been difficult to find so far. I spoke to that earlier as well. I've begun communications with the Dalton Police Officers Union regarding negotiations for their next 3-year contract. The other unions usually prefer to follow the Dalton Police Officers Union. Finally, I would like to sign on to a letter supporting the northern tier rail line, though it would not go through Dalton, as it would be good for the region from which we would benefit to some degree. Unless the board would like to put this matter on future agenda, I'll go ahead and sign. And that is my report.
I think it should be on the agenda.
I'm sorry?
I think it should be on an agenda.
Yeah.
I mean, look, let me show you my position. I'm your emissary to the MPO, who are steeply involved in this, rail service from Boston to Pittsfield.
Yes.
So it would be counterproductive for myself as a board member to think that the railroad should go from Boston to North Adams.
So there's the east-west line and the northern tier as a separate line.
Each have to compete with each other for funding now in designation. I understand north and central.
Yeah, the northern would be on a later track. So, yeah, it's, I think the more rail out here, the better. That was what I was basing it on, supporting that was something that I thought would be agreement. If there is that, then I won't do it. And that's good. Unfortunately, the public comment period ends before the next select board meeting, but I'm fine not doing it too.
Hey, I mean, I don't really care. It's not gonna change anything. So if the board is in agreement, let them sign it. I don't care.
Well, I would say that if you'd like to put it on the future agenda items, which comes,
You got a
that
deadline?
would be the time to actually discuss it.
Well, if you get it's got a deadline, go ahead and sign it.
So how about future agenda items?
Yeah.
Because I'm done.
I think it's fine to support that.
I don't have any information. I got to re-roll around.
Right now, the project is not considered economically viable. However, public comments are taken into account as to what will happen, you know, whether it gets put in the back of the refrigerator or more towards the front of the refrigerator. It's going to be going into the refrigerator anyway. But I figure the more public support for public transportation, the better.
I think anything related to authorize for the town for a proposal like that should come for the select board for review and discussion for formal vote. It's probably going to be a unanimous vote, but this is my last meeting, so it doesn't matter to me. But one thing, yeah,
I mean, it's always under a deadline before our next meeting. That's why we have to agree to it now if we want to support it.
but you got if there's a deadline, it should have been brought up before, but so.
Well, I just got an email today.
Then there's no time to approve it.
Yeah, I thought I would mention it in the way I did, so that if there was no objection, I could go ahead, but I'm fine not going ahead with any.
Fine, it's a dead issue.
Sounds like there's objection, so thank you, Tom.
Put it on future agendas.
I have one follow-up question, Bob, on Walker Brook.
Sure.
Tom, so FEMA is saying that our grant proposal would not be competitive, so would I just recommend that comes back for a status update because of just situational awareness for our community, because it's a big issue. Because you have that whole green space behind you that can't be touched until the flooding is mitigated. So if the grant proposal is not going to be competitive, where do we come up with? I believe the cost estimate is $4 million. Or
Yeah.
how long are we waiting to do something with that green space behind you gentlemen there in the senior center?
Yeah, it was $5 million, and it was just the particular FEMA grant program that we had previously been going for. So they did suggest that we might try the municipal vulnerability program grant. Again, though, knowing what we now know about the state of the culvert and that there is a big blockage in the culvert itself, it would help if we were able to find out, you know, the extent of that blockage. And I will be meeting with the DPW superintendent on Wednesday to go over the actual video and scoping and see if we can find out if we can get any better access to a manhole.
Yeah. Okay.
And find out, see if we can find out the extent of the problem, which would be, you know, it would be a preliminary step to then deciding, to then doing a study saying, now how much, you know, if we took out all the rocks, now how much water will flow through it. We also don't know how long those rocks have been there. So there are some unknowns that it would be good to clear up, so that we'd be more confident in what we could say in the grant proposal.
That's fair. Next meeting, provide an update?
Yeah, sure.
Now, get any updates scheduled in the future on our solar panel project over there in the Warren property?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Future agenda? Okay, items not anticipated 48 hours before the meeting. Anyone? Hearing none, seeing none. Remarks of the select board. No. Let's see, no remarks of the select board. Okay. Announcements. Want to know more about what's happening in Dalton? Sign up for the monthly newsletter. Please visit the town website for more information. Central Berkshire Habitat for Humanity is pleased to announce that 16 Golf Road is now for sale by Fair House Lottery. Please visit the town website for more details. Annual car permits, bag stickers, and recycle-only car permits are available for purchase at the transfer station on the town's website. There are numerous committees and boards with vacancies. Please visit the town website for more information or reach out to the town manager's office. The Dalton Housing Authority has one vacancy on their board and must be a Dalton resident. Please contact Sue Gregory at 684-2493 for more information. Is your electricity bill too high? The town has contracted with Colonial Power to provide an electricity plan for town residents that take advantage of joining other communities to have a larger customer base for negotiations, which has resulted in prices lower than current Eversource prices. For more details to opt out or in, visit the town website called Town Manager's Office. The town of Dalton currently has 3 job opportunities: CO van driver, assessor clerk, and one highway equipment operator. Please visit the town website or contact the town manager's office at 684-6111 extension 202 for more information. Our next meeting of the select board is scheduled to take place on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024 at 7 p.m. at the Civic Center with an option for remote participation. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.